am willing to give you a precious time back guarantee if this lesson isn't everything you needed. I don't know how I'm gonna do it, but RevMed's got you. For just a moment of your time, you will dive into diuretics and their site of action in the nephron. This lesson is packed with high-yield medical knowledge to level up your clinical understanding and mnemonics that should be illegal. Let's get started. First, let's break down the nephron, the kidney's functional unit. Think of it as a tiny factory that filters blood, reabsorbs what the body needs, and excretes the rest. Here's how it works. Blood flows into the kidney through the afferent arteriole. That's the A for arriving, from the renal artery and into the glomerulus, where filtration happens. The glomerulus is like the bouncer at a club. It decides what gets filtered out and what stays in the blood. Here's the efferent arteriole, which is exiting from glomerulus to the renal vein. Now from the glomerulus, the filtrate moves into the Bowman's capsule, and then into the proximal convoluted tubule, PCT, where a ton of reabsorption happens. Glucose, amino acids, and electrolytes like sodium and potassium. The PCT is the kidney's recycling center. Next up here in pink is the loop of Henle. The filtrate goes down this roller coaster into the descending limb of the loop of Henle, which is all about water reabsorption. Then it hits the ascending limb, where sodium, potassium, and chloride are pumped out. This is where loop diuretics work their magic. We'll get into this. After the loop of Henle, the filtrate moves into the distal convoluted tubule, DCT, for fine-tuning, more sodium reabsorption, and calcium regulation. Finally, it reaches the collecting duct, where hormones like aldosterone and ADH make the final call on water and sodium balance. So just to recap, the filtrate flow. The roller coaster ride begins at the glomerulus, then spins around in this twisty proximal convoluted tubule and drops down into the descending limb of the loop of Henle, and then goes up the ascending limb of the loop of Henle, then twisting its way into the distal convoluted tubule, and finally it ends the ride in the collecting duct. We're gonna have a lot of fun here, so don't be lame and tune out. Cool, now let's talk about how diuretics mess with this system to get rid of excess fluid. But first, here's a quick mnemonic to remember the diuretics and their sites of action, MALTS. Let's rev it. Here's the deal. Diuretics work at different sites in the nephron, and the mnemonic MALTS will help you remember them. Let's break it down like this. M for mannitol works in the proximal tubule, A for acetazolamide, also in the proximal tubule, L for loop diuretics, they target the ascending limb of the loop of Henle, T for thiazides, work in the distal convoluted tubule, and S for spironolactone, which acts in the collecting duct. Now I think we could go a bit deeper into each class. Starting with the proximal tubule, we got two players. One is carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, which will remember the mnemonic A, B, C, D. These typically end in zolamide. A for acetazolamide, B for brinzolamide, C for carbonic anhydrase inhibitor, and D for dorzolamide. These guys block bicarbonate reabsorption, leading to diureses. Hold up, let's rev it up. Acetazolamide causes metabolic acidosis and is used for altitude sickness and glaucoma. It's also used to treat metabolic alkalosis in heart failure patients on loop diuretics. 2, we have Osmotic Diuretics. You'll think MIG. M for mannitol, I for isosorbide, and G for glycerol. They pull water into the tubule by osmosis. You're gonna rev it up by knowing mannitol is used for cerebral edema and acute glaucoma, but can cause hyponatremia due to dilutional effects. Next up is the loop of Henle. Here's where loop diuretics come in. You'll remember the mnemonic footballs, which are round like a loop, right? F for furosemide, T for torresemide, and you have B for bumetanide. These drugs block the NKCC2 transporter, causing massive diureses. Nice, but now let's rev it up. These footballs, the loop diuretics, can cause hypokalemia, hypocalcemia, and hypomagnesemia due to loss of electrolytes in the urine. They are first in line for acute pulmonary edema, but can cause ototoxicity, especially with rapid IV administration. Moving on to the distal convoluted tubule, here in blue, we got our thiazides. Think of chlorothiazide, hydrochlorothiazide, and their cousins. They block the sodium chloride symporter, leading to sodium and chloride excretion. But you're gonna rev it up by knowing thiazides increase calcium reabsorption and are used for nephrolithiasis. But look, they can cause hypokalemia, hyperglycemia, and even hyperuricemia, a gout flare risk. And listen, they are first in line for hypertension. Finally, let's head over to the collecting duct. We have the Potassium-Sparing Diuretics. You will copy and paste this mnemonic into your brain. P for potassium sparing, A for amiloride, S for spironolactone, T for triamterene, and you have E for eplerenone. These guys either block sodium channels or antagonize aldosterone, sparing potassium. Look, rev it up with spironolactone because you have to know it's also used for hirsutism in PCOS and heart failure. This guy improves survival in situations of reduced ejection fraction. Watch for hyperkalemia, especially in renal impairment. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty of what's moving in and out of the nephron. This is where the magic happens, and understanding these details will help you crush questions on diuretics and electrolyte imbalances. Starting in the proximal convoluted tubule, PCT, we've got reabsorption of sugars, amino acids, and sodium. This is also where carbonic anhydrase inhibitors like acetazolamide work. They block bicarbonate reabsorption, leading to bicarbonate wasting and metabolic acidosis. Quick high-yield tip, acetazolamide is used for altitude sickness because it causes a compensatory increase in ventilation by inducing a mild acidosis. Next, the filtrate is going to move into the descending loop of Henle, right? Which is highly permeable to water, but not to solutes. This is where the urine gets concentrated, but the real action happens in the ascending limb where the NKCC2 transporter pumps out sodium, potassium, and chloride. Here's a key point. While sodium and chloride are reabsorbed, potassium, calcium, and magnesium are also reabsorbed here passively due to the electrochemical gradient created by sodium reabsorption. Blocking the NKCC2 transporter with loop diuretics leads to the loss of sodium, potassium, chloride, calcium, and magnesium in the urine, causing hypokalemia, hypocalcemia, and hypomagnesemia. Okay, hold on. Let's rev it with a clinical gem. Loop diuretics are the most potent diuretics because they block this critical transporter. Moving on to the distal convoluted tubule, DCT, we've got Thiazide Diuretics. They block the sodium chloride symporter, leading to sodium and chloride excretion. But here's a twist. Thiazides actually increase calcium reabsorption in the DCT by enhancing the activity of the sodium-calcium exchanger. This is why they're used to prevent calcium kidney stones in patients with hypercalciuria. High-yield tip, thiazides can cause hypokalemia and hypercalcemia, so watch those electrolytes. Finally, in the collecting duct, hormones like aldosterone and ADH take the reins. Aldosterone increases sodium reabsorption and potassium excretion, while ADH increases water reabsorption by inserting these aquaporin 2 channels. This is where potassium-sparing diuretics like spironolactone and eplerenone work. They block aldosterone, leading to sodium excretion and potassium retention. Quick tip. Spironolactone is also used to treat hirsutism in PCOS because it blocks androgen receptors. It's a double win. Let's rev it one more time with a high-yield fact. ADH acts on the collecting duct to insert these aquaporin channels, allowing water to be reabsorbed. Without ADH, like in diabetes insipidus, the collecting duct becomes impermeable to water, leading to polyuria and dilute urine. Remember, central DI is due to lack of ADH production, while nephrogenic DI is due to renal resistance to ADH. To wrap it all up, here's a quick summary of the 5 types of diuretics. 1. Carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, ABCD. 2. Osmotic Diuretics, MIG. 3. Loop diuretics, footballs. 4. Thiazides, chlorothiazide, hydrochlorothiazide, etc. And 5. Potassium-Sparing Diuretics, paste. Have a look and keep these mnemonics in your back pocket. They are gold for your exams. Finally, don't leave without testing your knowledge with this USMLE-Style question. Hussein is a 65-year-old man, comes to the ED with fatigue, weakness, palpitations, has hypertension, chronic kidney disease, and even congestive heart failure, which he just began taking a new medication for. We have an irregular heart rate and edema in both lower extremities. Okay, cool. Now here's his labs, and I want you to tell me, which of the following mechanisms is most likely responsible for this patient's current symptoms? Is it A, B, C, or D? Drop your answer in the comments below, and let's see who gets this right. It was fun teaching this. I hope you gained something from this high-yield lesson on diuretics. We would love it if you could thank us by subscribing to the channel. We really don't want you to miss any new lessons. And listen, stop kidneying yourself. You're in luck here with the Rev Med. We got you. If you'd like to see more of this lesson, head over to our Instagram page and TikTok channel at rev.med. We'll have this lesson along with many other topics for you to study. By the way, don't forget to do questions. Are you learning something from our videos? Well then click the subscribe button to your right. We are releasing high-yield lessons and ways for you to get ahead in class. Be sure to follow us on Instagram to take interactive quizzes and view your favorite diagrams. Nothing can stop you, but only if you believe in yourself. You got this.